A World Cup shuttle bus on fire in the middle of Times Square, while a World Cup match was still being discussed on TV screens inside the bars surrounding it. That actually happened. June 14th, 2026, in the city, hosting the World Cup final. And somehow, that wasn't even close to being the only thing FIFA had to deal with that week. This is the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the biggest, most expensive, most ambitious football tournament ever staged. And right now, 2 weeks in, it is producing the kind of off-pitch headlines FIFA's entire communications department could not have prepared for. Not because the football isn't happening. It is. The goals are coming. The drama is building. The group stage is delivering moments that will be talked about for decades. But underneath all of that, something else entirely is unfolding. And it's bigger, messier, and more chaotic than anyone in football governance wanted to admit was possible. So what's really happening here? Let's start in New York. The night of June 13th, the city was hosting one of the tournament's highest-profile matches, Brazil against Morocco, at the stadium across the river in New Jersey. Thousands of fans made the journey, watched a tense goalless draw, then boarded the shuttle buses the city had specifically arranged to transport them back into Manhattan. What they arrived back to was chaos. On the same night, the local basketball team won their first championship in 53 years. The city erupted. Hundreds of thousands of people poured into the streets of Midtown Manhattan, and a convoy of about 15 World Cup transport vehicles drove straight into the middle of it. What happened next was filmed from dozens of angles, spread across the internet within minutes. Celebrating fans swarmed the convoy. They climbed onto the roofs of buses. They got inside and sat in the driving seats. 5 buses were destroyed. 9 were abandoned. 1 was set on fire. A teenager was shot in Times Square. Officers in riot gear eventually moved in on horseback to clear the streets. Brazilian football supporters, in the city to watch their national team, ended up on the roof of a burning shuttle bus, waving their national flag. Not because of football, because an American city hosted 2 historic sporting events on the same night. With no coordination between them, FIFA had been informed in advance that the basketball finals were scheduled to potentially overlap with World Cup matches in New York. The scheduling conflict was known. The potential for exactly this kind of chaos existed on paper before a single ticket was sold. And yet, on the night it happened, there was no plan that prevented 15 World Cup transport vehicles from driving into one of the largest spontaneous street celebrations the city had seen in half a century. Here's where things get interesting. Transport was already one of the most criticized aspects of this tournament, before the buses burned. An urban planning analyst ranked all 16 World Cup venues on public transit access. New Jersey, home to the stadium hosting the final on July 19th, was rated the worst of all 16 venues. Fans attending the final of the biggest World Cup in history will be traveling to a stadium its own host city's infrastructure experts consider the least accessible. Reports emerged of fans considering walking along the shoulder of a motorway. Local officials told people not to do it, not because it was impossible, because it endangered motorists and police officers. But that's only part of the story. The transport chaos sits alongside a ticketing situation that has now attracted legal attention from multiple state governments. FIFA introduced dynamic pricing for this tournament, a mechanism that raised ticket costs automatically as demand increased. Tickets to the final went through 3 separate price increases. The cheapest available option on FIFA's own resale marketplace? Nearly $10,000. A front category premium seat? Over $30,000. On unofficial secondary markets, individual tickets appeared at figures exceeding $2 million. FIFA's president publicly defended all of it, comparing the prices to American sports playoffs. What he didn't address was the specific accusation that generated formal investigations. tens of thousands of tickets appeared, to vanish from FIFA's primary sales platform, then reappear on its own resale marketplace at different prices, with FIFA taking a 15% commission from both the buyer and the seller on every single transaction. Several state attorneys general issued subpoenas, launched formal probes. One described the process as a gauntlet of confusion and fake scarcity. FIFA welcomed every investigation, said it was very relaxed. The buses were still burning. Now this is where things change, because the transport and ticketing disasters are the most visible problems, the ones you can film, the ones that spread on social media instantly. But there are other issues running underneath them. The fan festival situation hasn't received the attention it deserves. For every World Cup since the concept was introduced, official fan zones, large free public viewing areas, have been central to the experience. A place where fans without tickets could gather, watch on giant screens, feel part of something bigger. At this World Cup, several of the biggest American host cities canceled or significantly scaled back their fan festivals entirely. The reason in each case was the same: cost. The venues in cities with some of the highest real estate costs in the world made organizing free public viewing at scale financially unworkable. Think about what that means in practice. A fan who travels from another country to New York, can't afford a ticket, wants to watch their team play in a World Cup setting, is left to find a bar or stay in their hotel room. There is no official fan zone waiting for them, no giant screen in a public square with thousands of other supporters. The community heartbeat of the tournament, the part that exists for everyone regardless of income, quietly disappeared in some of the cities that most needed it. And then there is the referee situation, which deserves its own moment because of what it represents. A Somali referee had qualified to officiate at this World Cup, becoming the first person from his country ever selected for football's biggest stage. He arrived in the United States to do his job and was denied entry at the airport. He never officiated a single match. The referee, who had worked through years of African football to reach this point, was turned away at the border of the country hosting the tournament. FIFA's president, when asked, repeatedly said, FIFA cannot control government immigration policies. That is technically true, but FIFA spent years choosing this host, negotiating the hosting agreement, building the commercial structure of a tournament projected to generate over $13 billion in revenue. An Iraqi striker was detained for 7 hours at an airport upon arrival. Team officials from several nations were turned away. A Somali referee never made it in. And FIFA's response to each situation was the same: we cannot control government immigration policies. The ability to negotiate entry guarantees for match officials was presumably part of those conversations. A denied referee suggests that whatever guarantees were obtained, they didn't cover the people they needed to cover most. Where does all of this leave things heading into the knockout rounds? The football itself is genuinely delivering upsets, historic moments, performances that will be remembered for years. The sport on the pitch has been as good as it ever has been at this stage, but the infrastructure around it has failed in ways that are specific, documented, and in several cases, entirely predictable. The transport systems were rated inadequate before the tournament began. The ticketing system attracted legal investigations before the group stage was done. The fan festivals disappeared from the cities that most needed them. A referee was denied entry to the country hosting the tournament. These aren't rumors. They're things that happened on camera in real time during the biggest football event in history. What do you think? Is this just growing pains for an expanded tournament or a sign of deeper problems? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more World Cup breakdowns.